Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this month's Consulting Topic webinar. Our focus is on various sales and marketing features within Control, and our training session will be led by Brandon today, who will go over a handful of different things and touch on advanced queries, how you can create and search the database for to find the info that you need, and to also create some marketing lists, touch on UDFs so you can capture some of the different information that you'd like to, and also how you can kind of track your sales activity within Control. I will ask that everybody please be on mute. I've gone ahead and muted everybody out. And if you have any questions, please utilize the chat box within the GoToMeeting window. We will use that at the end of today's session. We do have some time for Q&A, and we'll field those questions. And then at that point, feel free to take yourself off mute if you've got a question as well. And then just a reminder that this session will be recorded, and that recording will be placed up on the customer website on Monday of next week, and you can access that via the basic training videos. When it's also listed, there's a list of all of these topic webinars on the other training resources page. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Brandon.
Thank you, Kristen. All right, thank everyone. Really appreciate y'all coming today and giving me a chance to kind of go over some of the stuff as it relates to sales and CRM inside of Control. Today what we'll really do is take a look at the collection of data inside of Control, where all that is, how you can really put that in, how you can access it. One of the things that I've kind of through the years and working with customers, one of the things that I've heard one time was that, Sirius and the data that you collect, and I think this is true for any software system, it's one of the only appreciating assets you have in your business, and that's the data, all that order history, all the contacts with your customers and your client base, and things along those lines. So it becomes really critical that you're storing all this information, you're keeping up with it, you're keeping it up to date. Ultimately, if you ever plan to exit the business, sell it off, or what have you, turn it over to relatives or employees or anything along those lines, the data becomes very, very valuable. Printers and all that kind of thing can easily be replaced and bought, but the data is really what creates that value in the business. So what we'll do today is really take a first look at how to access the information, and then after we go through a handful of different ways that you can get to the information that you're storing in the system, we'll take a look at configuring some of the options that you'll see on these screens. So to kind of dive right in, what we'll do is we'll take a look at a dashboard I've created, just a very simple little example for those that have used dashboards before. Essentially what I have on the screen right here is 5 different instruments. On the left-hand side, I've got 3 instruments that really kind of break out my customers by what's called company stages. You may not be familiar with that. I'll show you how to enable that here in just a little bit. But essentially what I can do, just like I do on orders, where I can define that an order is whipped or built, and then maybe it has a station where it's in design or something like that. I can also do that on a company level, where I could say, hey, this is a company that I'm working with. They may be a prospect, and are they a warm lead, a hot lead, are they cold? Or I can use any type of system I want to really define what's the status of those customers that I work with, and I can do that at the company level. What I've got here on the screen is, as I said, just these instruments kind of broken down, and when I click on one of the hot leads here that I've got, I can see my activity history, and these are just the different touches that I've had with them. It could be calls, could be emails, notes, things like that. If I want to open up one of these, I can just double click it right on the screen, and I can kind of see what notes I had typed in whenever I had this call with them. And go ahead and close that out. If I want to go and click on some others, maybe I've got an estimate that's pending, and I want to take a look at how things are doing on that. Is it in a particular status? This was a hot estimate or what have you that I've kind of defined. This is just kind of one little example on kind of how to get to the information using dashboards and that kind of thing. Some of the other stuff that you'll find people will use through time. They may create dashboards really that kind of give you more of a pipeline kind of look. This is one where we're really looking at all different types of estimates that have been created, and they're in different stations inside of control, so I can have a little bit better of a way to track how things are, because inevitably if I've got hundreds and hundreds of estimates that are kind of going on, they're all at different stages of follow-up that need to happen, and undoubtedly when you have so much there, it's kind of hard to keep track of everything. So it's just kind of one way to organize that data beyond what you guys are probably used to with just looking at basic explorers. If I was exploring all my estimates, for instance, and I was looking at all these in a status, well, this is great to look at it in this list, but it makes it really hard if I have a whole bunch of estimates. I got to kind of pick through here and figure out, all right, was this a guy that was really important that I get back to or not? It just makes it a lot more difficult. Same kind of thing if I'm looking at explorers, by company, and I can look at clients and prospects in this list. It just makes it a little bit harder. I can pick out, by my columns, I can see the stages and their status, or they're a prospect or a client or what have you, see what industries and origins they have on how those customers got brought in. But it's just one of those things that dashboards make it a little bit easier to kind of split the data up to make it easily accessible and viewable in the system. Kind of the other things, and we're just going to go through a couple of these real quick. If I'm looking at a particular company and I want to see that whole activity history, you can always just go to the Activities tab, and you'll notice this Activities tab is in orders, estimates, service tickets, things along those lines on the company level. And I can see kind of that audit trail, that whole history of my interactions with a client. So in this case, I'm seeing all kinds of different activities of when the company was actually created, if I ever edited that company, when estimates were done, when follow-up calls and what have you were actually created and logged into the system. And one of the nice things about Control is since you're logging into Control, it knows who you are, so everything that you do as it relates to any interaction with a customer is all logged about who did it. So I know that, back in September, Dean had actually created this company, and then I know that I created this particular follow-up call with the customer to just, do a basic introduction, figure out needs and that kind of thing back in early February. And all of that will continue to be tracked through the system as they progress from being a prospect into a client and, stay in the system and keep giving me their business years after years. So, all right, so what we'll do now is kind of take a look at a few other ways to kind of access that same information. And this is just to try and help you kind of see when we get into the configuring of all of these options and what have you, to give you a picture of how the configuration that I'm doing will help you in some of the other aspects. So one of the things that is most commonly used in a lot of CRM and just contact and task follow-up and that kind of stuff is a basic calendar. And inside of Control, that's our activity manager. So if I click on this, by default what I'm looking at is an actual view of my calendar. So I've just got some basic activities that were here, just kind of outlining, very much like any other contact management software you've probably used, whether it's Outlook or whether you used Act or something like that. All very, very similar. One of the nice things about Control is that you can actually view multiple calendars at a time. So right now I'm looking at my calendar, but if on the left-hand side, if I click this little bar here, I can actually break it out and I can look at additional people's calendars all at the same time. So if I wanted to look at Amy's calendar and how it aligns to mine, I could actually see if we've got any overlap. Maybe if I needed to do a meeting or what have you, then I could. Same kind of thing. If I go and I take a look at Mitch's calendar, I can kind of see where things fall out in his calendar. One of the recent additions in our software that has been added is actually taking this calendar that you're seeing inside of Control and actually taking it and making it accessible on a mobile device. So no longer do you have to be constrained to just being able to access this information inside of Control. If you have a mobile device, whether it's an iPhone or any Android device, a tablet, an iPad or something like that, or even just using the internet browser, I can actually log into my calendar. So we're looking at the same view I was just a second ago. Let me flip back over so you can quickly see. So we'll switch back over to mine. we'll see here the activities that I've got, and if I flip over to our calendar web app, the same kind of thing. Again, and I can move any of the stuff that I would need to do. If I want to move this around and I want to shift that actual appointment by a couple hours, you'll notice that action takes effect immediately inside of Control. So if I'm out in the field on my phone and I'm going from customer site to customer site, and I've kind of planned out what my day is going to look like, and I need to move things around, then I can, all from my phone. I don't have to, do some kind of remote desktop or connection back into the office to actually pull up my calendar. I can do that right from the phone. If I want to click on one of those activities and add some notes or something like that, then I could add in those notes. I could choose to complete the activity, save it, change the dates and times, whatever I like to do. I can do that all from the screen. Now, one of the things that if I need to add new events or what have you, I can do that as well from this calendar app. For those of you that haven't looked at this particular app, there is some information on our website, on our wiki at SiriusWiki.com. If you go there, you can find out more about how to actually activate the calendar and access it. Give access to all your salespeople or different staff that actually need that remote access. Finally, one of the last things that I kind of see used, and I mentioned it last because it's not used that much, is using the reports inside of Control to get access to the information. You certainly can use these. They're crucial for reviewing anything that you need to that's been kind of logged in the system. If you want to look at it in more of a report fashion, but I find that they've kind of become to where, I don't want to say obsolete, but there's just better ways to get a lot of this information through the uses of dashboards and things like that. So we don't see a lot of usage out of the reports any longer. However, one that is pretty useful that I usually recommend you take a look at is under Reports, Activities, and then Activity Log Sales. This was pretty useful for taking a look if you actually get into creating a lot of activities and that kind of thing inside the system. It will give you a breakdown. As I zoom in here, you'll be able to see a little bit more. But by salesperson, how many estimates they actually created and what the dollar amount was for those, what your conversion ratio and your loss ratio was for those estimates, how many new orders were generated for these particular salesperson or what have you, and what their total orders were. If you want some definitions on, kind of what all these columns mean, just scroll down to the bottom of the report and you'll see some definitions here that will kind of quickly give you some little bit of a highlight into what all of that means and how those calculations are done. All right, now that we've kind of quickly gone over how to, and I know I've went through a lot here, but just how to access a lot of the information, I want to get into more of the how-to, because some of the features that I've pointed out, for them to be very useful, you're going to really need to do some of the setup on your end to make sure you're configuring things in the manner that you need so that you're collecting that data, because inevitably when you get a new company in right now, it may be through a phone call, could be through an email, could be any which way, they could have walked in the door. If you don't have them as an existing company in your system, then you probably start with coming to new company, and like anything, time's of the essence. You want to get back to that customer. You want to provide them a quick follow-up and things along those lines. So what I see often happen is people jot down a couple pieces of information, and that's typically, an address, a phone number, or something like that, maybe the contact name, hopefully their email. And at that point, they kind of save that customer record, and they're off and going with either creating an estimate or creating an order or something like that. The downside to only capturing that little bit of information is that when you've been using the system for some period of time, whether that's 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years down the road, if you stopped your data collection at that kind of level of information, it really hurts your ability to market and know more about your customers and do some of these queries we'll look at in a minute. So what I really encourage, and it doesn't have to happen, during that initial contact with the customer, but at some point as you begin to work with them, and you do any kind of follow-up calls, or you do an estimate or an order, any conversations that you have with them, log them in the system as an activity and update some of the other fields that are in there. And by that, what I mean is I'll kind of highlight a couple of those that I see often missed. Industry and origin are two that are very important when it comes to pulling some of the marketing lists that we'll look at in just a second. If you leave these blank, it's real hard for you to get any kind of list that says, hey, give me all the construction companies, or give me all the people that were in the retail sector, or maybe lawn care businesses, or anything along those lines. So as you begin to think about your marketing plan, for the year, and maybe you just chunk it out and you say, well, in January I'm going to plan it for January, February, and March. Well, if you're tracking all the industries and origins on those customers, as well as how you're bringing in the business when they actually do orders, you're able to then do a lot of marketing queries to see, well, what did I do, last year the same month? What came in, what marketing stuff that I did, what was it, how successful was it, and what have you. So it's very important you track that data. We've got some predefined industries and origins that are already in there. Ultimately, we didn't add in every single thing, so you may want to add in some of your own stuff. If you want to do that, you can do that on the fly. Simply by clicking the drop down and just hit new, and I can type in a new item name for my industry or origin. You can do the same thing there. Another way to access that screen is under Setup and System Setup. And if we scroll on down in this list, under here we'll see Marketing and Activity Manager, and then Marketing Lists. And in the middle column, I'll actually see that I can expand any of these origin and industry lists. If I want to look at kind of the whole thing at once in a big view, then I can take a look at that. I can create new ones. I can rename existing ones and that kind of stuff just by using the edit or the new option right here on the right-hand toolbar. One of the other things that can be useful just for differentiating customers and kind of breaking them up into groups and that kind of thing is regions. Here at Sirius, our customers are really across the globe, so we use regions a lot to be able to see by time zone and that kind of thing. But that doesn't mean you have to use time zones for that way to segment your customers. I mean, it could be that you want to segment them by different areas in your own city. If you're in a large city and you want to think about different areas and that kind of thing, that way if it's useful to kind of break that down and you've got an idea in your mind about how you would use that from a marketing standpoint, that could be one of those things that you want to actually capture. When we're in here as well, one of the other things that we definitely want to take a look at that I briefly mentioned for those that caught it was company stages. If we scroll up just a little bit under company, we'll see we have one here labeled company stages. This feature is disabled by default for I think all of our customers. It's one that you've got to go and enable. So if you come in here, if you're interested in using this, just click on it, hit edit, and then check the box here for enable company stages, and you can create your kind of drop down of list of stages that are available. You can reorder them and set defaults and all that kind of thing in here as well. And then once you do that, just hit save, and what you'll begin to see is when I'm back on this new company entry screen, we'll see a drop down here for what the stage was. And we'll notice back in that setup screen that I have a different list for prospects versus one for clients. So a client, I think everyone is probably familiar with this by this point, but for any new users, when you create a new company and control, the default status of that company as a prospect, at the point where they place the first order, their status automatically moves from a prospect into a client. It just means we've done business with them. One of the other things that I think is really important that I'll kind of touch on here as well, that kind of goes in hand with collection of data, industries and origins and all that kind of thing, is the active checkbox. It's routine that, it's pretty routine anyway, that I see that inevitably what happens is throughout time, you get a bunch of customers in, you work with those customers, they may go out of business, they may get bought, merged, who knows. At some point that customer may become, what we kind of consider a dead customer or a dormant customer, or they're just completely out of business. When that happens, it's really to your benefit to make sure that you go into the system when you identify that happens and uncheck the active checkbox. This won't actually remove the customer record. You'll still have full history of them. If for whatever reason they come back into business or they become an active client again, then you can check that box and they'll be reinstated. The main point that I want to make on the active checkbox and why it's important is inevitably at some point you're going to begin to do some marketing stuff, whether that's direct mail or whether that's email blast or could be flyers or whatever it is. You want to make sure that you're really targeting those people that are active, so that you're not spending marketing time and dollars and that kind of thing on people that really you have no chance of getting that business from ever again. So that active box really plays a key into making sure that we can do that. One of the other things that that does play in here as well. If we take a look at UDFs, UDFs are user-defined fields. These are things that basically they're fields that you create in the system, and we've already created a handful of them for you to collect additional pieces of data. Years and years back when we were first building Control, what we found was people would often ask, hey, can you add a field for collecting this piece of data? Can you add a field for this? And for any fields that seem pretty commonplace where, hey, everybody would want that, we added those fields already. For any fields that really are unique to your business or situation that you've got going on or what have you, we basically step back and we say, well, let's add in the capability for you to create all your own fields and then allow you to be able to export those, market, and things along those lines. So to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about, if we click on the Sales tab here, what we'll see is I've got a list of user-defined fields that we've created in the system and put onto what's called a layout. And this layout is basically just a way of collecting data. So as I'm working with a particular prospect or a client or what have you, I can begin to collect data on, what are the different services they need, what kind of products are they looking for, different company profile information and things along those lines. Inevitably, this can really be anything that you want it to be. To create those fields in the system, we'll go to Sales at the top and then down to User-Defined Field Setup. And what we'll see here on the left-hand side is I've got the ability to create user-defined fields for companies, contacts, transactions. Transactions would be all your orders and estimates, service dates, things like that. So if I'm on the company, which is what we were just looking at a minute ago, we'll kind of see a whole list of all these fields that are created. And if I want to add a new one, I simply just click the Add button. I can give it whatever name I want. I can specify what kind of data type it is. Is it a checkbox? Maybe, as an example, I want to put a field on on the company level that says, include in some marketing piece or something like that, and I want that to be a checkbox, or maybe I want a checkbox that's for excluding from marketing emails or something like that. That'd be a use for that kind of thing. I can create number user-defined fields where, I'm typing in a number value that's probably the case where I'm talking about number of employees, or maybe I'm talking about revenue of that company for that company profile, things along those lines. Or any other usage. Same thing with text. Text gives me a couple options that aren't really available on any of the others. I could make it a simple edit box where I could just type in whatever I want. As we saw when I was looking at the company here, what they need. This is a text box where I can just type in whatever I like. However, maybe I don't want, I want to control it a little bit more. So instead of just allowing someone to type in whatever I want, maybe I want a drop down of choices. And we'll see in that user-defined field setup screen, when I was back over here, I get the choice for drop down box. And when I'm in here, I can just type in, my choice 1, my choice 2, that kind of thing, to where when I actually create this, I can have those as available choices. I can still allow people to type in whatever they want, or I could actually limit to lists, which means, no, you've got to pick from the list that I've specified. I'm not going to allow you to do anything beyond that. All right. Now, once you actually have specified your name or what have you, what you'll do is you'll just click the Save uh, button here on the right-hand side, and when you hit that Save button, it will create that field. Now, for the field to actually get created in the database, you need to log out of Control and log back in, because we only create those fields on demand during the login of the program. Just a little tidbit. If you end up forgetting to do that when you end up trying to use that field, what you'll see is that it'll actually say restart required in the field itself. It won't let you type into it. It's just as a little hint that you just need to close out of the program and go back into it. There was a message that I saw in chat. Somebody was asking if it was possible to use a pop-up box instead. You can't do a pop-up in the sense of I can't make an event pop up when I'm working with a particular company or what have you. I could, use any of the text boxes and things along those lines, but yeah, I can't make it pop up out of the screen that you're working in currently. Had an additional question real quick. And I'll just handle a couple of these as they come up since we're on these screens, about company stages and where they appear. So I know I was going pretty quick early. So when I'm on the company entry screen and I've got the stage right here, this is where I would actually set it. At some point, if I want to look at this inside of Control, if I come to my Explorer, what you'll see is I've actually got a column here called Stage. So if I'm looking at, if you're dealing with your Explorer or what have you, and I turn on the column chooser just by right-clicking, and I come down in this list, if I didn't already have this field on here, when you come down, you'll find it in the list, and just drag it up, and then you'll have the stage that's actually present. So as you're looking in the Explorer screen, you'll have that column available to pull onto the screen, as well as in any of the, if I click back over to the dashboard here, I can pull it onto these dashboard instruments as well. In my case, typically when you're dealing with dashboards, I really recommend that you think about what fields are absolutely critical. And in this case, I didn't think stage was critical because I gave the header of each of these instruments the stage name, so hot prospect leads, warm prospect leads. And because of that, that told me, kind of what the companies under here are. So essentially, I was able to take this field, and rather than have it here and using some really useful space, I was able to just pull it off of there, so I don't even have it, and I just use the header there to know that, what I'm looking at a particular time. One of the other nice things that you can do with the column chooser, just to point out real quick, since we were talking about user-defined fields, is what you'll notice is if I open this column chooser, I've got another tab here for user-defined columns. And if any of those UDFs that you created are important enough that you want to see them at all the time, whether it's on a dashboard instrument like this or in the normal Explorer, I can actually check these off and have these appear, as an actual column in here. And then I can uncheck it to remove it or what have you. Just another helpful little tip there. And I can create, just going back over here to the setup screen, I can create, company, contact, transaction, that kind of thing, as I pointed out. I'll go ahead and close out of here and out of the company stages as well. Probably the next thing that I'll take a look at here is, how do we really access some of this information when it comes to querying. And let me just close out of a few screens. All right, so inevitably at some point you're going to want to take some data out of the system. So we've been putting all this data in the system, whether it's through the activity manager or creating activities, from estimates and things along those lines. At some point you're going to want to export whatever it is, whether it's a company list or whether it's a contact list or something along those lines. And there's a handful of different ways to do that. If you're looking at just getting a full list of all your companies, well, I could just come into the Explorer and I could view company, and what you'll notice up on the top here is I'm viewing 40 of 60 companies total. It's just a little sample data set, so I don't have a ton in here, but I'll go ahead and type in 60 in that field so that I'm actually viewing every single company we've got in this list. And if I wanted to from here, one quick way to get rid of, to basically pull this information out of the system would be to right click and then choose Export Grid. And then when I do that, what I'll actually get is an option here for file type. Do I want it in Excel? Do I want, to open it in like a web page format, some text or what have you? I want Excel, so I'll just click on that and hit View. And when I hit Export, what it's actually done, since I've got Office installed on my computer, is it's taken all of that data and it's actually exported it right out into Excel. So from here, I could kind of do anything I wanted to with it. If I wanted to take this list and maybe I was using some kind of external service for direct mail or could be email blast or anything along those lines, I could go through and kind of pick and choose from this list and delete rows out of it if I knew I didn't want to market to them or what have you. This is a very simplistic kind of way to get the data out, kind of the bulk method if you want to think of it that way, but it really allows you to do a lot because I could do mail merge and things along those lines with any data that I get out into an Excel format. Let's go back over to control real quick. Now, inevitably, you're probably not going to want to really export every single thing, and that's really where advanced queries come into play. You want to really target what you're trying to get out of the system. So, if you're working on that marketing plan in the beginning of the year and you're saying, well, I want to make sure that around the early part of the year, I want to target some industries that I know have done well, in previous years, and I want to just export that specific list because maybe I've got, some flyer or email blast that I want to do that's targeted to that specific group. Then what we would want to do is, instead of trying to export this whole list and then sorting or filtering those results inside of Excel, what I'll do instead is come up to Options at the top here, and then I can choose Show Advanced Criteria Selection. And if I choose this, what's happened in the background is I've actually switched to more of an advanced mode where I'm querying all this data. And essentially, if we read this off, what we see is I'm pulling a list of all companies where all of the following are true. The company is active. Remember that active checkbox I was talking about earlier. So we're not going to see people that are dormant, dead clients, that kind of thing. And then I'm also seeing any people that are clients. So I'm not interested in prospects at this point. If I was, then I could change my query. So if I want to just customize kind of how things are laid out and what I'm pulling, what I'll do is I'll click on Modify Criteria, and you'll see I get a pop-up box here. Let me kind of expand this so it makes it easier for you guys to see. And once I'm in here, this box is kind of broken down into 3 sections. On the far left-hand side, what we're looking at is our main criteria categories. In the middle column is all of the different criteria that actually goes with this category. And then on the right-hand side is all of our existing criteria that we've added. So since Control is using a Microsoft SQL Server database, all of this data is stored and it's accessible through kind of this query builder that we've got in the system. So one of the tips when you work with this that I really recommend is to think about what data you're trying to pull. If you're trying to pull company information where you're just going to get one record for each company, then of course you want to start with the Company Explorer. If you're really trying to do a marketing piece that's more oriented around the contacts so that each person in that company that fits whatever criteria that you set, gets that marketing piece, then you want to start with a contact explorer and then do the advanced query from there. And that'll make sure that you're always kind of getting the results that match what your needs are. The other thing that I recommend as a little tip, some people will kind of get caught up in thinking about what criteria is important. One handy little thing is to actually take a piece of paper and just write down what you want in kind of a logical fashion. So, hey, I want all companies, and write that down on a line. And then I want all companies where the industry is equal to maybe it's advertising, or what have you. And then I want all companies where their last order from me was, within the last 3 months, or was in this date range. Maybe that's last year or what have you. But if you write down on a piece of paper kind of what each of those little wants are, then it makes it a lot easier to kind of keep it all organized in your mind as you kind of come into the screen, and you end up getting a lot of options. So what I'll do to kind of give you a little bit of an example on how we'll pull some of this is we'll just clear out this criteria. I'll just hit the clear button here. So all we're working with right now is basically all companies. And if I was to run this, at this point, I just get every company, which in this case, I didn't tell it active, I didn't tell it clients or prospects, so you'll see my number over here has changed to 450. So if I click back on modify and I say, well, I don't want all 450 people. Really what I want is, under company criteria here, I want all my active companies, and I want only the clients. So I just double click on each of these, and it kind of adds it to my little query over here. And then from here, if I hit OK and I execute this, well, we'll see we're down back to that original list of 60 companies. So if I open this back up again, I say, well, I actually just want all the companies that are in the industry called retail sector. So I double clicked on industries, and I'm going to come on down, and we'll choose retail sector, and I'll double click on that. So now if we read this off, just like if we were kind of writing it on the piece of paper, we'll see all companies where all the following are true: companies active, companies client, and the industries in the retail sector. So I'll go ahead and hit OK, and we'll hit execute, and we'll see we get 12 people. And we'll notice here in this industry column, all of them have that retail sector there. If I wanted to take that a little bit further and say, hey, I didn't, maybe I want people that where their last order created date was, I don't know, maybe in the last 3 months. Maybe I want to do some kind of thank you note or card or something like that for whatever reason. I'll hit OK on that. See if we get any results here. And we did. We actually had 7 companies that have placed an order with us in the last 3 months that are in the retail sector. And then from here, like I said before, you can right-click and export. One of the other things that you can do on this, and I'm not going to get into this too much in this video because we have a recorded video on macros. If you guys go and look at that, if you want to see some other options, I'll kind of quickly talk about them. But essentially what I can do is either export this list and do something with it, external from control, or what I could also do is have control do some automatic emailing for me. Maybe I want some follow-up calls to automatically get scheduled, based on this list and that kind of thing. The way to do that is really with macros, with taking a defined list that I have here now, and then with that defined list, have the macro basically say, hey, for each of these person that's in the list, I want you to book a call on my calendar in the next X number of days, and they'll kind of just throw them all on the calendar for you to follow up on. You could also take it and have control automatically print something for you. If you've got some letterhead or maybe Word template that you had already put into the system as part of a macro, you could do that. Lots and lots of different things that you can do with advanced queries. We've got a whole webinar that's specifically on that. If you guys go to the customer website, log into that, under in-depth training videos, you'll see one on macros where Kyle goes through a bunch of stuff with macros that'll give you some insight into how to really pull all that off and a lot more of the capabilities that are available to you. One of the other little things that I do want to point out real quick as it helps with kind of managing information in Explorers. So we were looking at column chooser a little bit earlier. One thing I do want to hint at that we added pretty recently, within the last year or so, is the option here for show group header. So if I right click and go to Explorer options to show group header, if I turn that on, what I can do is grab any of these fields here. So if I'm working with stages or regions or industries or what have you, I can actually grab it and drag it up here into the header. And what you'll see is it will automatically group these by whatever that particular field is in grouping option. And I could take it further and I could say, hey, group it by stage and then by status and then by region, ever how I want to tier it, and it will automatically kind of break that down. That makes it useful. Sometimes when you're looking at whether it's estimates to follow up on or just different companies, and you kind of want to look at the data and see how things fall out. All right, guys. I think at this point, probably we're going to run short on time. If I don't, go ahead and open it up on some Q&A stuff. So, Kristen, if you want to go ahead and take it.
Absolutely. Should we go through the questions that have already come through the chat or open it up for verbal Q&A?
Yeah, let me take a look here. I had a couple that were private. Let's see. Yeah, if you want to start with the questions and just read them off to me.
Absolutely. I'll start with Christopher's question, can I remove the default fields in the sales tab?
Okay, so if we're taking a look at new company here and the fields that are here, you can disable this layout if you don't want this layout here at all. You don't, unless you have the customizable version of Control, you won't be able to edit this layout and say, hey, I want to replace banners with something totally different. That requires the customizable version, but if you just want to turn it off completely, then you can. What you'll do is come into Sales and Marketing, come down to User-Defined Field Setup, and then here under User Field Layouts, if I come to Company, I can actually edit and uncheck the active box, or I can toggle the settings here if you don't want it visible on some things, and doing so will remove that tab. If you want to create some new fields and that kind of thing, that would be accessible under the user-defined field section, like in here. Then you just do that through the company up here, like we were doing in the short little example that I was pointing out.
Perfect. All right. Nick asked, is it possible to set the UDF per line item?
UDFs do not exist on the line item level. They're only available at the transaction level. So an order can have UDFs, an estimate can have UDFs, same with service tickets, but we don't have UDFs at the line item level. That's typically handled through variables at the line item level as part of the product.
Okay, and I have a couple of questions from Denise. Does the calendar merge with Outlook is her first question.
No, we do not have a merge feature. We don't have any kind of connector between Outlook and our calendar system at this point.
And along the same lines with activities, are all sales and marketing activities available through the mobile app?
Correct. Any contact activities that are created with a customer are accessible through there. And what we'll see if I toggle back over to that, I do have an option of either showing the completed activities or not showing the completed activities. It's just any any that are activities themselves, meaning more customer-focused activities. One thing that you will not see on the mobile app is any activities that have to do with like the change of an order status. So if I was looking back in here, you know, at a particular company, let's see, let me just pull somebody up real quick. So if I'm on the Activities tab here, you see technically everything that is in this list is what we would consider an activity. Well, we didn't want to flood the mobile app with all of this information, so instead what we basically did was we said, well, you know, the use case is probably that you're really dealing with a lot of customer-focused activities, and those would be things like follow-up calls, emails, and things like that. So those are the only ones that actually show on the mobile app.
Mike asked too about linking calendars to Outlook, which you answered, but also asked with respect to linking it to Gmail.
Yeah, we don't have any integration with an outside calendar system at this point. It's all contained within Control.
All right, that's the end of the list of the questions we've received so far in the chat box. So if you do have additional questions, feel free to send them in, or if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question, we definitely have a few minutes to field some of those. Susan asked, how do you record a follow-up call?
So recording an actual follow-up call, there's two different ways to do that. In the system that are most widely used. First would be if I was working from my activity manager and I already had the appointment on my calendar, I would simply go to that appointment, and I've got one here for follow-up. I'll double click on it and I would type in my notes. And once I've done that, I can hit OK, and those notes are attached to it. If I want to complete it, I can go ahead and complete it, and that becomes a completed activity. If I want to create a new activity, I can simply double click on the calendar and then type in whatever I want. Here is the description. I can search for the company that I'm looking for and then actually add that to my calendar, and I can work from this view. Most of the time, though, it really depends on kind of how you orient yourself in the program. So a lot of people will work from the Explore Company screen, and this is kind of the other major way that I see people doing it. They'll come in here, and let me remove the headers real quick. They may work from this screen, and you know, they may field phone calls, so they get an incoming phone call and it's for ACE or what have you. So they'll type in ACE and they'll get the result in their list. And then what they'll do is they'll either right click and go to activities, and they'll say, oh yeah, I want to create a new call with them, you know, in which case I could type in same thing like I was doing from the calendar. I'll just type in my notes, you know, and I can hit OK, and I've now created that activity on this company where if I came into it and I went to the Activities tab, we'll see that follow-up that I just created. If I wanted to complete it, I could. Additionally, if you don't like using the right click, if you're over here on the right-hand side, you can create them from over here. There's lots of different ways to kind of work in the Activity Manager and create those kind of follow-up calls and appointments and notes and that kind of thing.
Thanks, Brandon. Yes, we have another question from Murray, who asked, is there any way to see projected sales by month for each salesperson?
So you're wanting to look at basically establishing sales goals and forecast by individual salesperson. We do not have at the employee level the ability to set individual sales goals. So the answer there is going to be no. You could get reports that will show you what their actuals are, but it's not going to give you any ratios as a comparison to some goal that you set at the individual level. That's a good suggestion, though. I'll make a note here.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. So if you do have a question, go ahead and send it in. We have a couple minutes. And if not, we'll go ahead and wrap up for today. Thanks, Susan. Susan's asking, where is it that we can see this recorded session? So this is posted on the customer website in two areas. When you log in to the SiriusSoftware.com site, log in with your username and password. Under the training section, you'll go to basic training, and that's a listing of all of the training videos that we have. And there's a specific section on that page called in-depth training webinars. And once you expand that section, you'll see the ones that were recorded recently here, and it'll be posted there. An additional area you can find that list is on the other resources page, which is also under that training section. And if you scroll down to consulting webinars, there's a PDF listing there of probably the most recent 5 to 6 webinars that we've had, these consulting topic webinars. And it opens up a PDF and you can see all of the recordings and click on the links. And Mike sent in a question asking, can you explain getting the app up and running?
Sure. So what you'll want to do, you do need to be on Control 5.7 or later. And then the first thing after you make sure that you're on that version is just go to SiriusWiki.com. And if we click on the Sirius Control Wiki here, under Release Notes, this new in 5.7, I'd really recommend you take a look at this because it'll give you a lot of information about the calendar and that kind of thing. Posted under this section is the What's New, and you'll see the mobile calendar app. If we click on the link here, you'll get instructions for how to enable it. I'll show it to you real quick inside the program as well, but I do want to point this out because there's a lot of additional information about the calendar app and how it works and all that kind of stuff on this page. Real quick, if we jump over to Control, under Setup and then System Setup, there is an option here for Sirius Cloud Connector. This is our Sirius Cloud Connector all the way at the bottom. If you click on that, and then on yours it will most likely be disabled. It's just disabled by default. You'll need to enable it. And essentially what happens is it establishes a connection up to our cloud servers between your database and our cloud service so that we'll host the calendar for you and all that kind of thing. Since it creates a total, through the internet, we don't ever turn that kind of thing on by default. So just be conscious that you'll need to turn it on to be able to access it. And then to learn more about it, they've included a little hyperlink there for you to click on, which will basically bring you back to the same pages we were looking at over here. That'll tell you how to work with it and that kind of thing.
We have two more.
Will not,
sorry, go ahead, Brandon.
The app will not allow you to add companies on the fly. It's just right now a calendar app, so you can't collect all that data. We've started working on what that would look like to be able to enter a company, but one of the things that we kind of thought about was it's a whole different scope to be able to take all the information that's really available in a company here and then put that into a mobile app and how to present that, what fields are important and that kind of thing. So the first revision that we released to the calendar app doesn't have the ability to create new companies yet.
And we've had a couple of questions about the cost for the app and if there's any additional charges. Can you review that?
Sure. As long as you're on technical support, there are no additional charges for it. Since it is a cloud service that we have to host and all the ongoing expense of that and that kind of thing, it does require you to be on support, but there's no cost other than that.
We've reached the end of the questions list, it looks like. And if there aren't any others, we can go ahead and wrap up for today. Thank you so much, Brandon, for taking us through the various sales and marketing functionality within Control.
It's my pleasure.